All right, so I'll do a quick introduction of myself so everybody knows kind of why I even engaged with the Perfect Wedding Guide. I'm a business coach. I work with small businesses throughout Cincinnati, Dayton region to help them actually grow from being a one-person company to a two-person company if they want. Or if it's you want to be I've got one client I'm working with that's sitting down and saying, you know what? The last 2 years I've been at $5 million. I don't know how to grow. How do I make this become a $10 million company? And now I'm working with them to actually develop a plan. Who do they have to hire? Who's missing on their team? How do they take this $5 million company to $10 million over the next 3 years? Another example is I'm even teaching young college kids how to sell themselves. You're going to a job interview. You have to sell yourself. So I'm doing a lot of different things to support small business and small business owners here in the Cincinnati, Dayton region. And that's where Perfect Wedding Guide came in. Someone introduced me to Jack, a shared contact, and it was kind of I don't know, will these people actually need help? And as I've listened to the last couple months of presentations, I went, absolutely. These guys are all selling themselves. They're selling their catering business. They're selling their hall. They're selling their music services. You're all selling yourself. So that's where this presentation came from. 3 keys to selling you. And we're going to look at how do you have to sell yourself. It's not just about your blog. It's not just about all those other things that seem to drive people into you. This is about how do you engage with clients. So I want to review Brenda's presentation because Brenda gave a great presentation for those who, I think everybody was there. I mean, that was hugely attended at the Oscar Center. So she had a lot of people there hearing her story. She did a great job of setting up, how do you do this? You're out there telling stories. That's what you each individually are doing. You're telling stories to earn business. You're telling the story of various locations you've been to. You were telling stories about various options you've provided. It's the who, the what did we put in there? The who, the what, the why, the where, and the how, as she put it. So those are great things, and you should all stay focused on that. Another piece is focus on your why. You're all doing this for a reason. And that's important to you. And the reason that's a big deal is we all have one thing that we're excellent at. I'm not telling you to go into your one thing type discussion. What's my one thing? That comes later in the discussion, but we all are excellent at one thing that we're providing to our clients. So the next thing that she went into was how do you make your clients feel? Because your people buying emotions. I mean, she talked about making people cry. That was a great way of putting it. When you're sitting there with your client and they start crying as they're going through, you've hit some emotional button for them, that's what, 97% sure you're going to close that client by the end of the meeting? It becomes a big deal when you connect emotionally with them about something you're going to provide them. And then your brand is how your clients feel about you. This was huge, but what I thought was great was she used the term, this is not your brand logo, it's your love logo, I think is how you termed it, Brenda. What is your love logo? What do people love about you and your services? So keep that in mind as we work through my presentation today. And then who's consuming your content? A lot of your clients seem to come from connecting off of the internet. First connections via blog, via Perfect Wedding Guide, via some vehicle on the internet to give you that first connection. You need to know who's connecting to you, who's looking for your services. And then finally, what problem are you going to solve? That's a big deal because no one wants the problems on their wedding day. They're going to be there, but they want them to be minimized, they want them to be handled, and they want to have confidence that you're going to take care of that. And then remember, those of you that are doing blogs, the blogs are influencers for what's going on in the community. They help influence who's going to buy what and where, and it influences who's going to connect with you. So my first slide here, selling is hard, but selling you is often harder. And the reason I put it that way is, we'll talk briefly. Who here enjoys selling? Just gets pure joy out of it. There's like three of us in the room. Just that's where we find our joy. I tell people when I'm meeting with clients for the first time, they go, "Oh, will you help me go through my numbers and help me figure out, how I'm doing in my finances?" I can do that, but that's not where I find my joy. If your business needs to get that deep into it, I have a friend that I'll bring in, and he will tear apart your numbers and help you figure that out, because he gets his joy there. I get my joy from sales. Not everybody does that. So in your businesses, who is supposed to sell? Who's supposed to sell for you? I can wait all day.
You mean in the staff?
In your business, who sells for you?
Everyone should be selling.
Everyone sells for you. I do. It's exactly right. So one point to make is when you've got a catering staff or you've got a team of people that are coming out to help, the way I explain it is you wouldn't want someone in your catering staff to show up and have cigarette burns on their shirt, okay? They need to understand that they're part of you earning that next show or that next party. It's a big deal. How they present themselves is a big deal, but not every member of a team understands that. Another thing is a lot of businesses don't invest enough into the teams to actually say, this is what I expect of you. It's a simple training session. It's a simple discussion of, hey, just don't wear your Iron Maiden shirt with to a party. It's very simple to have those conversations, but we often miss that because everybody's selling. You've been selling for a long time, even though you may not like to. And a couple examples, job interviews. Everybody's interviewed for a job at some point, even though you may be business owners. I'm sure you held a job in high school, you held a job out of college, you held a job at some point, and you had to interview for that job. You had to sell yourself into that role. When you're dating, you're selling yourself. That's a big piece. You're selling yourselves back and forth throughout the dating relationship. When you're in school and you're writing term papers, you have to sell yourself and convince people that you know enough to get an A, a B, or C to pass that class. You're selling that you've paid attention and learned. Every time you've earned a promotion, you've had to sell that you've gained enough understanding of the business to be rewarded in some way. Again, that's a sales job. So suddenly we quit working in our businesses or for businesses and want to build our own business. And I can't tell you how many small businesses throughout Cincinnati, Dayton I've gone in and met with where they are no longer selling themselves. They're now selling their service. I'm a photographer. I'm a caterer. And they're selling only their service, no longer looking at how they sell themselves or the importance that they bring to that operation. So why is sales so hard? And I'm not going to get to the keys yet. I want to talk through this piece here. Why, number one, is we fear rejection. Who here likes to be told no? Oh, two people, and you're lying. If you like to be told no, that's pretty odd, but most of us hate hearing it. And I've threw a couple examples up there of people prefer not to sell because they don't want to hear no. No one wants to hear no. I don't want to be told no. I like the yes. The yes is how I make money. The yes is where purchase orders come from. Owners of companies don't like to hear the word no. They don't like to be challenged oftentimes. And that becomes a problem in owning a business as you put people in the business. People start telling you yes. They start telling you what you want to hear because you don't like to hear no. That happens with sales too. Does your toddler like to hear no? Does your 16-year-old like to hear no? No, they hate it. But do they need to hear it? Absolutely. And they have to hear it because how else are they going to learn? How else are they going to grow? If you don't hear the word no, you can't figure out what to fix. If you haven't heard what people don't want from you, it's impossible for you to figure out what you can provide to others. So that's the key pieces to know. Knowing that the best way to get to a yes is figuring out where the why no's were given to you in the first place. The second reason, or the second why I put in here for why people don't like to sell is they fear failure. We fear failure. Most people don't want to fail. It's ingrained into us. We start school, hey, you want to make good grades, you got to make good grades, then you get a job. You want to do well in your job. Everything builds into fearing failure. Newsflash. Everybody fails. At some point, you fail. Everyone in this room has failed in some way, shape, or form. But the thing is that failure isn't a defining moment. It's just a moment in time. And that's a piece for us all to carry with us. So the other piece to it is when I hear a no in sales, that doesn't mean I failed. It just means that wasn't my client. I've got other clients to close. That's how I often look at it, is no does not equal failure. The other piece to explain a little bit further is when I hear no, I look at finding out why. Who here's when they're told no, goes back and asks the client, why did you say no? A couple people. That's great. Not everybody does that because knowing why is important for you to grow your business. And we're going to discuss why here in just a second. So there's a reason why we don't have to fear failure. And one of the main reasons is cause and effect. What you do creates an effect later. And that's how sales is important. That's how you grow your sales. There are reasons for success. There are causes for success. And a cause would be something along the lines, did you make cold calls? Did you call people? Did you follow up on the leads you picked up at the show? You got 50 leads from the show last weekend. How many of those leads did you actually follow up on? And how many did you forget to follow up on? That's a cause, because if you followed up on those leads, the effect is you have meetings that you can then close clients from. The other piece to think about is there's the Pareto Principle is what it's called, but it's the 80-20 rule is kind of what people call it. And in business, and if you look at your own business, you'll see this is probably true. Like 80% of your revenue or 80% of your profits come from about 20% of your clients. And I want to define what that means. So for some businesses, that means 20% of their clients. So if they have 100 clients, 20 clients drive 80% of their revenue for the year. I came from OEM business where that was original equipment manufacturer business where that was absolutely true. 20 clients, and it was like on the money, drove 80% of our profits. In your business, it may look something different. It may not be that 20% of the individual clients, but it'll be 20% of your client base. A certain section of people. Brides who like this tend to have bigger packages and like me. Things along those lines. You start looking for trends of who's doing. Brides who tend to do outdoor weddings tend to like my photography style better. Brides who like to do a barn-like setting enjoy my catering choices, and I seem to make more money. Look at it from that standpoint. Those are places where you get your successes. That's your 20%. The other piece, though, is we have to have a positive opinion of ourselves to drive success. We have to believe in ourselves. And this, I will say, I am not a positivity coach. That's not what I'm here to do, but it is a key part of growing a business. If you want to be a business leader, you need to have a positive outlook on your business, and I'll show you why. Before I flip to the next slide, you need to understand one thing. Opinions are subjective. They're not fact. And the opinions that you often feel when you've failed in some way, shape, or form, those aren't necessarily fact. And here's why that's important. There's a linear relationship between your self-worth and fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection. So if you look up here, fear is running across the bottom, and as fear increases towards 100, your self-worth keeps decreasing towards 0. And the opposite's true. When you have very little fear, when you're managing your fear, or you've dealt with your fears, or you've recognized they're just opinions, suddenly your self-worth skyrockets. And when you have a higher self-worth, selling becomes much more enjoyable. Questions? Make sense? Anyone seen this before? Just curious. Make sense? All right. So the key to sales is positive thoughts. Like you say on the slide, yes and no. I do believe positive thoughts are a key point, but you also have to be good at sales. You have to understand sales. You have to know what you're doing for it to be good. I will say that positive thoughts are the first key to sales. Being able to put fear behind you, being able to know that your self-worth is where you grow your sales from, that is the first key to sales. The second key to sales is trust. Jack mentioned that earlier, I believe it was, that trust is a key component if you're going to grow your sales. So the reason it's an important piece is you need to know who your 20% is. Know who the 20% of your clients are that are driving the bulk of your revenue. Know which demographic you're chasing. So you can go looking for them, you can find them, and you can know exactly what to talk to them on. You need to have stories built around that 20% demographic so you can quickly and easily relate to them. The next piece to it is you have to meet them in person. People find you on the internet. People read your blog. It sets you up as being an expert, someone that they're willing to engage with. But at the same time, you have to close the deal. You have to do that in person typically. Is that true? Typically you're meeting face-to-face with a bride and a groom, or bride and mom, or in some way, shape, or form to make that deal close. I think that's a key point, is you have to build trust very quickly between them. The other piece is, and Brenda brought this up, is price sheets. We don't want to sell from price sheets. When you set up and you say, I'm going to, this many pictures, or this, it's all set. I tend to coach people when I'm dealing with pricing. You can set up a recommended pricing, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what type of value are you delivering. Because what you're going to be required to do varies from client to client. Because some clients are harder to deal with, some clients are easier to deal with. So that becomes something that you get to manage as you're pricing things together. You're going to deal with custom projects. Your price sheet doesn't cover a custom project. It may start a conversation, but at the end of the day, you have to develop your own pricing style, is the way I'd put it. There are so many variables that you have to address. Where the location, how far away is it? How many staff members do they want me to have at the event? Things along those lines. Those are all variables that you may build into your price sheet, but can also just become part of the conversation as you're earning trust with the client. And then you need to know what need you're filling, because that's where you set your price. What need am I filling for them? And what is the value to them on that day? So the other piece that you need to do with it, and the reason why trust is such a big deal, is let's think about this. I think Mary Pat made the statement of, after their wedding, they're adults, I think is how you put it. They become they're grown up. Yeah, the world looks at you differently. You become a grown up once you've gotten married. It's a different way of doing life. And you're being trusted with that first day of the rest of their life. You're a key part to that first day of their combined lives. So You need to keep that in mind as you're building trust. Another thing, Brenda, I really liked your presentation, if you can't tell. I really did. But she used the term salesy. You don't have to be salesy when you're out there growing your business. You don't have to look and feel like a used car salesman. I mean, people think of sales, and that's what they often think of. That's not sales. That's just not sales. And I agreed with what Brenda said. You don't have to be salesy. You have to be authentic. You have to be genuine. You have to be interested in your clients. You have to be interested in people. That's where your sales comes from. You gotta like and trust them, but you really figure out where your 20% is. Who is driving your revenue? And chase them. Go find them. And when they do find you, engage them quickly and engage them effectively. And the way to do it effectively is you have stories ready for them. Stories that will relate to them. Stories that connect with them. They don't talk about how great you are. They talk about the experience that somebody had using your services. They talk about the great things that others received from your services, not your own greatness. And then I mentioned the word genuine. You need to have genuine interest in others. And that's taking you back to the Dale Carnegie, going all the way back to basics, 1930s, I think is when he published his book. Dale Carnegie got it right. Show a genuine interest in people. And then the rest follows very quickly. And then the other piece, that listening builds trust. Dale Carnegie used it this way. He says, the best conversationalists are the ones who listen. Those are the people that have the best conversations, are the people that know how to listen. And the same is true for sales. All right. The third piece to look at is develop your selling style. And the selling style to me is, this is how you sell. This is how you're interacting with your clients. And you are creating a connection. You are engaging professionally with them. You're educating your client. And then your clients have a choice. They get to decide. And this is all on the back of my business card that I left on your table. You'll see that on the back of it, so you'll be set there. This is what I call seed selling. And that comes down to, you have to connect personally with your clients. Connecting personally is being ready to have that story to help them see where you connect. Let them know what good you can bring to them. The other piece is, you need to be able to engage them professionally. When you see that 20%, you're engaging quickly. There's a lot of other businesses who drive revenue for you, and they help keep that even keel for you on your revenue line. You can't ignore them, but you engage quickly with your 20%, and you treat everybody professionally, but you have professional stories that really resonate with that 20%. And then you have an education portion to your sales structure. Education is sales. That's what we do. That's why I said a used car salesman is not sales. They're not typically educating you. They're trying to win your money, not earn your money. When you're educating someone, you're asking questions. You're finding out what their needs are in some way, shape, or form. Then you have the right to them, once you figure out what their needs are, then you have the ability to show your solutions. I've got something that might work for you. Let me help you out here. Here's what I'm thinking. And then that's where the ideas start bouncing back and forth. And the education piece is where the sale is won. And then at the end of that, you run into your decide section. Your customer just makes the choice. They decide to use you. If you've followed through with connecting personally, engaging professionally, and you've educated them and you've educated yourself on their needs, well then the decision's usually made before you've asked for the business. So the piece that I want to point out here is, throughout each one of these stages, there's incremental buying connections. And for you guys, that begins with your blog, that begins with your website, that begins with all these little pieces that draw people in. That's your first step. Then your second step is probably a phone call. a discussion. Oh yeah, a nice connection piece. Third step is then you have a very personal meeting with them where you start asking questions, understanding what they need, so you can determine, can you solve their problem? Because remember, we can't solve everybody's problem. We are not all things to all people.